And my brother will get this together. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for staying a little bit longer. Ms. Early and Mr. Early, would you take a seat up here on the stage, please? We have a few questions that we have a little Q&A session. I don't know about the rest of you, but I had a lot of questions to ask that wasn't going to be. So I noticed you were talking when I came in, and I'm not quite sure what you all spoke about. But one of my first questions, this is not in order, is if Lieutenant Colonel Early was here today, you know, in the military, we have a chain of command. And the top-notch top dog is the President of the United States, of course. So my question to you, what do you two think she would say today about the government and the chain of command?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
She would be very respectful, of course, but I don't know, because there's so much passage of time between World War II and today, and so many different life events, and so many different experiences. I can't even imagine on how she would comment. But I could just say would be very honest and very respectful.
Yeah.
Same thing. I think everything, not everything, almost everything that's happening is so the reverse of what she did, what she stood for, and it's almost trying to go back to where we were before the movie. I think she'd probably be appalled, but I don't know that. But that's what I'm appalled. But so I would, I think so, but I'm always hesitant to speak.
I understand. Let's get to before your mom joined the military. The thing I wondered was, why did she join? Do you know?
The short version is two things. One is she was really upset after Pearl Harbor, and two, she was a teacher in South Carolina, and there were limited opportunities, and here was a terrific opportunity for something, to do something important, and her family and Mary McLeod Bethune knew each other, and there was communication.
I believe that someone brought her a Christmas flyer, and she thought about it, and not expecting anything to come of it, she went ahead and applied, and in fact, she was, I would say out of position, but when she got accepted, she was on vacation or traveling or something, and she couldn't get to where they wanted her to be to report, I think in Florida?
I'm not sure if it was, she went from there to Des Moines.
Right, she got permission to report to Des Moines, Iowa, instead of where it was initially that they wanted her to report. Because if she had reported to the other base, I mean, history probably would be totally different. But, so that was why she decided to join and how she joined.
I will say one thing in the movie that kind of references that is she was in South Carolina. You could not join in South Carolina. You could not join in a number of southern states. So there were a number of African American women who went north to apply because you couldn't apply in the old South.
I have a question. We're gonna get to you. We're gonna have a Q&A when I'm done.
Okay.
So everybody will get to ask, your own personal questions. Yeah. So, and somebody watch the time for me because I like to talk. Okay, I know, or we know that your grandfather was a preacher. So, what was it like? I know you weren't there to see her grow up, but what was the atmosphere of being a preacher's daughter? How did that affect her? I always hear folks talk about being a PK kid.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
okay.
the problem is that our mom, at least for me, didn't talk a lot about her childhood. She went to Wilberforce, and I've had people from Wilberforce. Well, what did she like it? Well, and so I feel badly, that I can't really answer what was it like, but I know that Granddaddy and Grandmama, how we call them, were very education focused, obviously. I remember there's a story where, I don't know if it was an insurance salesman or somebody came to the house to see my mother, and they asked for Edna. And my grandfather said, "You mean Miss Adams?" So they were very education focused. They were very, what's the word I want? I don't want to say proper. That doesn't sound right. I don't mean proper.
Respect, yeah, they want the respect that was due.
Yes, yes. So I know that 4 kids. My mother was the oldest. It was her, then a brother, then there was a gap, and then a sister and a brother. So the oldest 2, they were close. I imagine they spent a lot of time in church, but again, I didn't hear a lot of stories about that. I'm sorry.
I do know one story that I heard from multiple members, brothers and sisters, which is sitting on that swing on the porch.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, there was the street, Lady Street in Columbia, South Carolina, which is where the house was. House still is. House is now Alpha House I was down there and saw the house recently, but I didn't go inside, and I'm collecting 30 years of yeah, I don't know, I want to see it's inside. But that they would sit on the swing and read, and they'd have books, and then when my mother and her brother Avery would read these books in the swing, and then when they finished, they'd just hand each other the other book, and they'd keep reading.
Most of us, our parents or someone significant in our family is usually our hero or shero. Outside of the family, who do you recall was your mother's hero or shero?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. question because I'm not sure I don't know that I know the answer. It's funny because I do know that because I'm thinking of people who were contemporaries, who were close friends. So she's my John Moore, who in Dayton, who was one. The two of them were co-founders of Parity, which is the organization in Dayton. And I do know that she, Leontine Price, that's the one person I know, because Leontine Price was, I think, was a little bit younger than my mother, but she went to Wilberforce, and they knew each other, and they, and she really liked her. But that was somebody she really admired too. But I don't know the generation before.
That's fine. So you led, this is my last question, and give me a signal. You led up to my next question, which is, did your mom, your dad, your family implement any kind of charitable or nonprofit organizations to help the community?
Well, I mentioned Parity, but I think it's more involvement in different kinds of things. And we sit around and talk about issues and so forth. My parents were involved in, my mother was very involved with the Red Cross. In fact, for a while she was on the National Board of the Red Cross. She was very involved in the United Way. She was very involved in the Urban League. She was very involved in Housing Authority. She was involved with a lot of educational organizations. So she, wasn't a creator of new organizations. She was, and I would say that's true of my father too. My father tended to be more arts oriented, and my mother more community or community organization oriented.
Well, since then, we've got the Stanley Foundation. Which was it before that, was?
Yeah, they started that. Yeah, they started a family fund for, and we tried to add to it that for it can be used for educational, African American, women's military, and arts purposes.
Thank you. Okay, my time is up. I still have a lot of questions. But anyway, I'm going to pass the mic around, and I know Kim had her hand up first, so she's also one of our lady military personnel.
Yeah. I was just wondering if she ever discussed with you how hard it was for her to make rank. I know that you said she was very educated and obviously had graduated from Wilberforce prior to, so went in as an officer, I'm assuming. And how hard was it for her to make rank? And the second part of that question is, did she have another assignment after being deployed to this assignment?
Well, first part is she was in the first class of Women's Army Corps. It was actually still the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. They literally, was like a year later, they transferred over. She was in the first officer class, and she was the first black woman officer to graduate as an officer in the United States Army. And I have a picture which I got like a year ago from the museum, the Women's Museum of the United States Army, which is of that class right before they're sworn in, which is so cool. So she was there at the beginning, and she had, and because of that, she was very much involved in the training of in training community. So she had a number of, she wound up with several companies that she was in command of early on. And she was also a staff officer at Fort Des Moines. And so by the time the 688 was created, and by the way, she interviewed. They didn't like say, okay, she's the one. You know, she interviewed, and she was probably had more command experience than any other African American woman officer. And as to after this, she was offered a position at the Pentagon, and she didn't want to go to the Pentagon. That's the last thing she wanted, and so she decided, it's time to go. And so she went into education. She was at Tennessee A&I, and at what is now, it's now Savannah State. It was then Georgia State, but then they built a new Georgia State there. She was a dean there.
Anyone else have a question?
No, just pass it down.
Thank you.
This was my first time seeing the movie, and I loved it. It made me feel so proud as an African-American black woman, and it just made me feel, I just think about our history, what we've gone through. And one of the things I think young children, high school, college kids need to know more about our history, and we shouldn't let them try to shut us out or not tell the history. We have to keep fighting because, it's just, anyway, thank you. Are there any books on?
There are a number of books. I see one I've never seen before at the back. It says the 688. I've never seen that one. There is a book called One Woman's Army that my mother wrote, which is still available. She wrote in the late 1980s, like published in like 89 or 90.
89.
And it's in one of the great experiences I had was she had a manuscript that she'd written right after World War II that was never published. It has a totally different tone, but a lot of the information, she wanted out to do that. And in reading it, it was just so fascinating. This tone was more surprising when they weren't discriminated against, because it was so normal. But the other piece of the tone was seeing this young woman who was really, just gone through these extraordinary things. And this is many years before I'm even an idea, And I came before Judy, so it was pretty cool experience to read that.
Yes, my question was, did you guys have any input in making the movie with Tyler Perry? Did he approach you guys, or was it told from an autobiography, or I was just kind of curious about that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just trying, how did they get her story out? Because it's a beautiful story, I will tell you that.
So
Technically, it's not her story.
yeah.
Okay,
It's Lena's story.
okay.
And that's how it kind of came through the back door,
Right.
through an article about Lena.
Yeah, there's a Kevin Himnall who wrote the article, and then in her story, there's a lot, because there's actually another company that has the rights to my mother's book. So they couldn't actually use that, but let me just say there's a high amount of information that overlaps, because they had multiple sources. But you're right, it's actually Lena's story. And by the way, I met Lena in 2018, and at that event we saw the pictures at the end, and she died about a year ago, and she got to see, it wasn't quite the final version, but she saw the very late print when she was in hospice. So she got to see it before.
Okay, so Lena, actually, her story actually was a love story. Because you know how Hollywood trying to make a love story. So her story actually was.
Her story, from what I understand from talking to Kevin Himnall, the second story is 100% true, with the, well, except that when they're in the cemetery and so forth. The first story, they were very good friends, but you know, whether they were in love or something, I don't know about that. They kind of, but the second story, she did marry that guy, and she met him and did this and so forth. So they modified, and I will say, while they modified things, they got the main points there. For example, they didn't get off the ship in March. They got off the ship, got on a train to Birmingham, then got off the train in March. You know, they did, you know, the women who died, that happened, but it happened in France, not in England. You know, so but you know, for purposes of Hollywood, they're about as close as you can get.
Anyone else have any questions that they'd like to ask? So, one thing, you have a question?
No, I have a thing I want to say.
Okay.
I want to say, and that is something's going to happen which Judy and I are going to be at on April 29th. The Congressional Gold Medal, which was awarded by Congress 2 years ago, but it's taken 2 years to strike, to design, to strike, to get it ready. It'll be presented. And Judy and I will be at the U.S. Capitol, will receive the medal, handed to the Smithsonian. So that event is coming up at the end of this month. So I
So we have some sheroes here too. Captain Karen Roddy Spike, stand up. She was deployed how many times, Karen? 3 times. This is Dr. Livonia